Okay.
Okay, good morning all, and welcome to the first remote meeting of the Swansea Bay City Region Joint Committee. We'll begin by starting with apologies for absence. Hugh Evans, do we have any apologies?
I have apologies from Ian Westley and my mind goes, and Steve Phillips.
Okay. Are there any other apologies to add? No? Okay. I'll now ask Mr. Evans to ask everybody to introduce themselves who's on the call for this meeting. So, Mr. Evans, over to you.
Right. I'm Hugh Evans. I'm the Head of Democratic Services, Swansea Council. Chris Moore.
Chris Moore, Director of Corporate Services and Carmarthenshire County Council and Section 151 Officer for the Swansea Bay City deal.
Councillor David Simpson.
Yeah, David Simpson, Leader of Pembrokeshire County Council.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
Councillor Emlyn Dole, Leader of Carmarthenshire County Council.
Councillor Rob Jones.
Yeah, Councillor Rob Jones, Leader of Pmbok Tradoc County Borough.
Councillor Rob Stewart.
Councillor Rob Stewart, Leader of Swansea Council.
Ed Tomp.
Ed Tomp, Economic Strategy Board.
Emma Woollett.
Emma Woollett, Chair, Swansea Bay University Health Board.
Greg Jones.
Greg Jones, Swansea Bay City Deal Regional Office.
Helen Morgan. No. Jason Garcia.
Jason Garcia, Audit Manager, Audit Wales.
John Haswell.
John Haswell, Director of Resources, Pembrokeshire County Council.
Jonathan Burns.
Jonathan Burns, Swansea Bay City Deal Programme Director.
Medwyn Hughes.
Medwyn Hughes, Vice Chancellor, University of Wales, Trinity St David.
Nicola Pearce.
Nicola Pearce, Director of Environment and Regeneration, Neath Talbot Council.
Phil Roberts.
Phil Roberts, Chief Executive, Swansea Council.
Richard Arnold.
Richard Arnold, Finance Manager for the Swansea Bay City Deal.
Tracy Meredith.
Tracy Meredith, Monitoring Officer, Swansea Bay City Deal.
Wendy Walters.
Wendy Walters, Chief Executive, Carmarthenshire County Council.
Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes, Provost, Swansea University.
Have I missed anybody out? No. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, and welcome, colleagues, all to, as I say, this first historic remote meeting of the Swansea Bay City Region. We'll move on then to declarations of interest. So, if I could ask you, if you do have any declarations of interest for any items on the agenda today, to call out your name, and I will then bring you in. So, does anybody have an interest?
Wendy Walters, I need to declare a potential interest on item 12, Chair. So I'll leave the meeting for that particular item.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Walters. Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move then to minutes and matters arising. You have a copy of the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes? If not, I'm happy to move those as a true record. Could I ask somebody to second, please?
Yeah, second, Chair.
Second that, yeah.
Thank you. All in favour?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any matters arising from the minutes that anybody wants to raise that aren't covered on the agenda today? If not, okay. We'll move to announcements of the chair. I have two today. First one is just to say that obviously we're still in the throes of the COVID pandemic, and we're still in a lockdown situation with much of the economy of South West Wales in a hibernated state. We are working closely with Welsh Government, with WLGA, and obviously as partners, we are working to make sure that we are ready to restart and help that recovery start once the lockdown restrictions are lifted. In that respect, I've asked the Economic Strategy Board to prepare a paper for us to consider in terms of how we can best support the regional economy to restart and snap back once the COVID restrictions are lifted. And I know local authorities and partners are all working on recovery plans as to how best to remobilise their organisations and to remobilise the economy. So just to note that work is ongoing, and as soon as we have the first draft, that will be circulated for partners to comment on, and that we then can bring forward a formal report outlining our approach to helping the economic recovery. We'll also be feeding whatever we agree as a region up into Welsh Government, so it can become part of the national thinking of the government's response to restarting the economy. The second item for today in my announcements is to welcome the approval from both governments of the Pmbok Tradoc Marine Project. It's fantastic to see another project receiving approval within the city deal. And I'll call in Councillor David Simpson, leader of Pembrokeshire, at this point to say a few words. David?
Thank you very much, Chair. It gives me great pleasure to join in the celebrations of the good news story for Pembrokeshire. Pembok Tradoc Marine, we've been trying to get this one across the line for the 3 years that I've been a leader of this authority, and it was around for a while before that. So it's going to bring jobs to the area, it's going to bring prosperity to the area. I'd like to thank both governments. I would particularly like to thank my colleagues on the board, the Swansea Bay board, that have worked with me and helped me in getting this across the line. It hasn't been a very easy journey, but we've got there, and I look forward to the prosperity that it's going to bring to Pembrokeshire. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson, and again, thanks to you and your officers for the support that you've given to get this project approval done, and of course, certainly thank the regional office for them concluding this process and helping us to get that approval. So thanks are recorded all round there. If everybody's happy, we'll move then to public questions, but as this is the first meeting, we hadn't had any questions submitted as of the deadline yesterday, so there are no public questions for today, but we will expect them for the next meeting. So at this point, we'll move to item 6, which is the Audit Wales 2020 audit plan. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Jason Garcia of the Wales, or Audit Wales as they're called now, to introduce the report. So over to you, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. You've taken my first sentence away from me there. Just to let people know, as from the 1st of April, we're no longer Wales Audit Office. We've had a bit of a rebranding, as you'll see on our report, and we're now called sort of Audit Wales. So thank you for confirming that. This is our standard sort of audit plan template, but the first one we've done for Swansea Bay City deal. As for the 2019-20 financial year, is going to be the first year the city deal has actually had to produce full financial statements. Last year, even though the city deal was in existence, the transaction levels that were going through the city deal weren't sufficient enough to justify full financial statements, and you only had to produce a small annual return template. So this year is going to be a full audit on the full financial statements. So I'll quickly run through the report, and afterwards I'll be more than happy to take any questions. So first section doesn't need any going through, it's just our duties, bit of narrative about the impact of COVID-19, as you've already mentioned, and the impact on our audit. That's in paragraph 7 to 8. And then I suppose I'd highlight paragraph 9 is what we're going to be doing on the financial statements for this year. So we plan to give an opinion on the Joint Committee's financial statements by the 15th of September. We're looking to bring what's called a report to those charged with governance to your meeting probably at the end of July, but then the accounts will then look to be signed off by the 15th of September. And then the second part of that, within those accounts, you'll have 2 areas called an annual governance statement and a narrative report, and we'll report on the consistency with the rest of the financial statements there. So going on a little bit further down to Exhibit 1, within this exhibit, what we have to do is highlight what we consider to be the significant risks to the audit, and then what we call other areas of audit attention. So the first section of that table has a couple of significant risks. One is a standard significant risk in every single audit that we undertake, and that is the risk of management overriding system controls. And we just go on to say what we will do on the financial statements to sort of mitigate that particular risk. And again, this, in view of COVID-19, we've included a risk around that, and again, talking about how we would sort of mitigate that there. Going forward, then you've got a couple of areas of audit attention, totally relating to the fact that this is the first year of the accounts being produced for the Joint Committee, and as such, procedures may not be fully embedded. So, we'll undertake some work to ensure that the procedures are as they should be going forward. A little bit of information around what we'll be doing on our performance audit work. Very slimmed amount of work in that regard around ensuring the Joint Committee has put in place proper arrangements to securing value for money and the use of its resources. And then section under the fee, all of our audit fees are estimates, and I'd go as far as saying this one is even more of an estimate than most of ours, in view that we've never done an audit of these financial statements before. So in Exhibit 2, you have an estimate for both the audit of accounts and performance audit work, which comes to a total of 18,809. As with any of our fees, we can only recover our costs. We're not allowed to make a profit on our fees. And if we undertake the work in less time than initially planned, there will be a refund of fees in that regard. So coming on then to the audit team, basically you've got Anne-Marie Harkin, who's your engagement director and engagement lead, Hugh Rees, who is your engagement lead for performance audit. Both are also in place in, well, Anne-Marie in Carmarthenshire, who is involved in Swansea. You've got myself as the audit manager, and then you've got Lucy Herman as the audit lead for this particular audit. So as far as the timetable is concerned, we're expecting the accounts within the next few days. We'll do the majority of the work going into sort of early July, with the aim of bringing a report to yourselves at the back end of July in your meeting then. And then there needs to be a period in August where electors are allowed to inspect the accounts and ask questions of both officers and then of us as auditors, and that date is going to be on the 1st of September, with the aim then of signing the accounts off by the 15th of September. That's all I have to say, Chair, and I'm more than happy to take any questions the members have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia. Does anybody have any questions or comments on what Mr. Garcia has said? Just for a second.
Yeah, sorry, I'd just like to confirm what Jason said around the accounts. The accounts are prepared and they are finalised. They will be finalised within the next day or so. They will come forward to the next joint committee, and hopefully they will be audited over the next month. As far as the accounts are concerned, really, they are relatively simple this year because the transactions have been to a minimum, in the fact that it's the £18 million that has come in from Welsh Government, and it's the project management office and the support that has actually been in place over the last year. So we'll have a full appraisal of them as in the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. So we're being asked to agree the plan. If I go to Mr. Evans first, please, if you could run the vote.
Yes, so the vote for the 4 leaders only. Please say if you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson.
For.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garcia, for that report. And I understand you need to get away, so you're of course welcome to stay. But if you do need to leave, feel free.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Best
a lot.
of luck.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye bye. Okay, we'll move now then to item 7, which is on funding agreements, and I'll hand over to Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Yeah, the funding agreements has been quite a long path to get to this point. There's been a lot of work in trying to develop funding agreements that are appropriate to be put in place, and they are being put in place between the accountable body and the project lead. And then you'll notice that Appendix B has a funding agreement template that goes in place between the project lead, authority, and the delivery partner. The purpose of these agreements is to allow the accountable body to pass on the funding and pass on the responsibility for the delivery of the projects to the constituent authorities. Appendix A presents the principal agreement, and the principal agreement is between the accountable body and the project lead authority, and it lays down really the details around what needs to be put in place legally to allow the funding to flow, and that's the proportion of the 18 million that we've received and the 18 millions that we will continue to receive over the forthcoming periods, coming up to the total of the 241 million. With all the schemes, there is a project lead authority on each of the schemes, and the two that are actually over the first hurdle are the Swansea Bay Waterfront project and the Uregin project, and both those the funding will be able to flow through after this has been agreed today. The Appendix A, which is the principal agreement, there isn't any expectation that there's going to be any change in terms of this agreement. This is a standard agreement that will be used by the accountable body and the project lead authority. Whilst there could be a potential of any tweaks, and you will notice within the report there is a recommendation that the authority is delegated to the Section 151 and the monitoring officer of the Swansea Bay City deal for any amendments, but the proposal would be that any amendments are consistent across all agreements on the 11 projects. The Appendix B is a template to be used between the individual project lead authority or the constituent authority and the delivery partner if the scheme is actually structured in that manner. And the example of that would be Uregin, where there is Carmarthenshire is the lead project authority, and they will be have agreement in place. The purpose of this is to ensure that whatever responsibilities that the project lead authority wants to move on to the delivery partner, that the agreement can accommodate that. These will be bespoke agreements, and this is a template in the Appendix A that is used as a starting point and will be amended depending on the individual scheme. This template can also be used for the regional projects where there's an agreement, where there's a project lead through to the delivery authorities as well. But they will all be developed or amended slightly individually. Within both agreements, there are a number of schedules at the back, and the schedules at the back are to capture the outputs and the contents of the business plan in terms of the deliverables, to ensure that the delivery arm or the partner or the authority is actually accounts for that delivery and the output, and that will run over the 15-year period in conjunction with the money. So that then ensures that actually the responsibility of any grant flow either way or any non-delivery is down with either the project lead authority or the delivery partner. I would like to say that there's been a substantial amount of work done in terms of getting to this point. Thanks to the legal department and Debbie in Swansea, who's actually done a lot of the work around this in conjunction with Geldads. Both agreements have been highly scrutinised by both the monitoring officers and the Section 151 officers as they've been developed, and hopefully we haven't missed anything out in terms of what's needed to be accommodated within the agreements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I'll open it up now. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Moore on what he's explained around that report? We have the recommendations around approving the templates for these funding agreements, but happy to take any questions or comments before we move to the vote on that. Does anybody have anything? If you do, again, either call your name out or if you've got the ability to raise the hand facility on the screen, do that, or you can put a comment in the chat box and I'll pick it up from there. So again, if we haven't, then again, we'll come back to you, Mr. Evans, for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. In the same way, if you're for, against or abstaining, please state. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson.
For.
That's unanimous again. All 4 are for. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We move then to item 8, distribution of investment interest. And again, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair. This is, as you're aware, the flow of the cash of the city deal, the 241 million, comes into the accountable body and is held in the accountable body until the appropriate time is to actually distribute it to the various schemes. The flow of the 241 million is going to take place over the 15-year period, and each authority will have an element of responsibility in terms of managing the flow linked to the individual projects. As I mentioned previously, we have 18 million in, which came in last year, which we've been awaiting the funding agreements really before distributing an element of that. And admittedly, if we hadn't had COVID-19, we would have actually got these funding agreements through to Joint Committee a bit sooner than what has been able to be achieved. But as a consequence of that, Carmarthenshire County Council, as the accountable body, has invested the money that we're holding and has put it on the market in the normal way that they do with any other funds that they have. And as a consequence, whilst interest rates are low at the moment, there has been an accrued element of interest, and this will continually happen over the next 15 years. The objective is to optimise any cash value so that we get a return on any money and it's not lying idle. There's also the factor that we don't want in any authority's accounts a substantial amount of cash being held in one fund, and there's a key in terms of diversification. So we've actually put the money out on the market under our current County Council Treasury Management rules, which are similar to the other constituent authorities. As a consequence of that, as I mentioned, there's an accrued income that's coming into the accountable body, and this paper is seeking an opinion in terms of how we utilise that money. There are 2 options on the recommendation. The one is that the interest from the City Deal investments would be offset against Joint Committee centralised budget expenditure. This, in effect, would be utilising the income either as a top-up or as offsetting some of the 1.5% top slicing. The other option is to allocate the interest out on the basis of the original project allocation funding coming from Welsh Government, which seems a very fair allocation basis, and that the money is then used by the individual authorities to support some of the pressures that you got in terms of delivering the individual schemes. And that will also be the interest that you're going to have to suffer as constituent authorities over the next 15 years in upfront funding the payments that need to go out to the delivery partners of these schemes. I've had conversation with the 3 plus myself, Section 151 officers, and sought their opinion. Their clear recommendation is that the preferred option would be option 2, where they are allowed to, or the money goes back to the constituent authorities to support some of the funding issues around the individual projects. It's not massive money, but as an example, I think we've accrued about 32,000 last year, so it is a reasonable amount to offset against some of the liabilities that each of the delivery authorities will be suffering. So basically, the consensus was that option 2 would be the preferred option if leaders are willing to support that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore, for that outline and for the clear recommendation. Again, I think it's a principle that I'd be happy to support, in that projects themselves will benefit from the interest that the money provided for those projects generates. So that does seem like a fair basis on which to proceed. Again, as Mr. Moore said, we have a clear recommendation from the 151 officers on this, but very happy to open it out to questions or comments. Does anybody have a question or a comment they wish to make on this item? No. Okay. If not, then we'll again go back to Mr. Evans for the vote, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Again, please note at this occasion that you're voting on option 2 as set out in the report. That's the new recommendation. So please say if you're for, against or abstaining. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For option 2.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For option 2.
Councillor David Simpson. Councillor David Simpson, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. For option 2.
Thank you. That's again, that's unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you all for that. We'll move then to item 9, which is the updates on the projects at the moment. So if at this point I'd like to welcome Jonathan Burns, who's has been introduced as well as the Programme Director. And again, it's welcome to Jonathan, who will now head up the regional office and obviously the Programme Office, helping us to get approvals and delivery of the projects underway. So welcome, Jonathan, to your first formal meeting. I think it is certainly online. I know you joined us, I think, before your appointment at the previous Joint Committee. I'd welcome you, and over to you then for item 9 updates.
Great, thanks, Chair. So Jonathan Burns, Programme Director, as Rob just introduced. So what I'm going to do is just provide you a very high-level overview of each of the projects by lead organisation. So if I start with Pembrokeshire Council, the Life Sciences and Wellbeing Development, the business plan is being redrafted, the Memorandum of Understanding has been issued, the Design and Plannage Stage 3 has been complete, and a tender is underway for the ecology work around the area as well. So because of the maturity of the business case, this has been prioritised for both the regional scrutiny and peer review prior to it then going to an external stage gate review, which is part of the OGC business case approval process. So we're making good progress on that. Digital infrastructure, we currently have a business plan that is currently being reviewed, and the most recent activity on that was a workshop with the Economic Strategy Board, chaired by Ed Tom. That was on the 4th of June. The intent is our project manager for that, Gareth Jones, will present it to Programme Board on the 25th of June for Programme Board to have a view on the direction of travel. And then skills and talent is the third one for Carmarthenshire. So again, the business plan is being finalised for that. The project has been discussed this week with Economic Strategy Board again, chaired by Ed Tom. And we're looking at getting a draft to circulate for comment prior to it then going through Programme Board, Economic Strategy Board, etc. Wendy, would you like to add anything to that?
No, that's fine. That covers the key points for development. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Swansea Council, so the City and Waterfront Digital District, as you probably have seen in the media or if you've driven past it, the arena construction is picking up at pace. Planning permission has been granted for the Kingsway, and with a box village, Trinity St David are considering due diligence and Programme due to the COVID-19 recovery. So again, Phil or Rob, would you like to add anything to the
John, for those people who've been observing the social distancing and travel rules, I'm going to see if I can get some images up at the moment, just as a matter of interest. I think I'll have to keep trying, John. If you want to carry on, I'll try and bring them up now.
Neath Port Talbot, so the two proposals there for Holmes' power stations and supporting low carbon. Oh, Phil, do you want to jump back in?
Yeah. Just quickly, I just and Rob may want to come in at this point. There's a lot of activity on site. You can see that the framework, the structural steel work is complete for the outer shell for the arena. That, in one sense, for social distancing, that's the easy bit. It's when you get inside buildings that social distancing becomes more difficult. So you can see that while everything else appears to be on hold in terms of the world, there's a significant amount of activity on site at the moment with the arena, and we remain on schedule. We just have to hope we can be innovative in the social distancing to make sure the internal fit out is done properly. Yeah. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Phil. So going back to Neath Port Talbot, so the two business cases, Holmes' power stations and supporting innovation and low carbon growth. Both business cases are at outline business case. They have gone through approval, and we'll deal with the HAPs later on the agenda for approval by joint committee. But they are both subject to now external review. So this stage gate review, which is part of the recommendations on the terms and conditions, there will be an external team appointed, and they will go through a series of different terms of reference to make sure that everything is in place and that we have done due diligence and things stack up effectively, both at project and programme level. Nicola Pearce, who's on the call as well. Nicola is the senior responsible officer for both of those projects. So both myself, Nicola, and a whole host of other stakeholders will be interviewed, or for want of a better word, have conversations with the external team next week and the week after. So by the end of June, we will have a recommendation report based on both of them to make sure that we can take those actions forward and hopefully get approval from Welsh and UK government. I don't know if Nicola and Councillor Jones want to add anything to that, or happy to move on.
Yeah, thanks, John. I'll just come in yeah, I'm really looking forward to both Welsh and UK government signing this project off. It's been long overdue, and there's been a lot of hard work by the officers of the authority to get it to this stage. So, and likewise, when the next item comes up in relation to HAPs, that'll be the same thing. These projects have been a long time in the waiting, and I can't emphasise enough how now the ball is very much in the court of the UK and the Welsh government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Moving on to Pembrokeshire Council, Councillor Simpson give a very nice update, and congratulations, Councillor Simpson. So Pembroke Tradoc Marine Project has been approved. The only, I guess, thing I would like to add, which isn't written in the report, is with the project manager, Tim, in the Port Authority, it's now accelerating the stuff around WEFO to make sure that we get the approval and things in place from the WEFO part of the developments down in Pembroke Dock. Councillor Simpson and John, would you like to add anything to that?
No, we're fine. Thank you very much. Very pleased with the news announced today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Swansea University, so the Life Sciences and Wellbeing Campuses project, that's been reinvigorated, moving at pace. The revised strategy aligns now with regional priorities around health, wellbeing, and now sport. So master planning is basically being worked on in phases 1 and 2, scoping both at Morriston and Singleton sites. A working group now meets fortnightly, and the PMO with me, a representative, attends that on a fortnightly basis. And Keith Lloyd has been invited and will be attending Programme Board on the 25th of June. Professor Wilkes, would you like to add anything from that perspective?
No, nothing further to add, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And then finally, it's with University of Wales Trinity St David, Eregan. So formal business plan approval is still awaiting. Phase 1 is temporarily closed, and everything's being reviewed in terms of potential future implications around COVID-19. Medwyn, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, thank you.
Okay, so that's the projects. In summary, I'd like to, in terms of all the program, if you like, the 9 projects that we currently have as part of the city deal, 2 of them are with external review. Those are the 2 Neath Talbot ones, and 4 business cases are being developed, and hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll have all of those matured, submitted, and approved both regionally and with Welsh Government. I'm being very optimistic.
No, that remains our aim, John, and
it does.
No problem with being optimistic. We just need our government partners to make sure that they're ready to receive those business cases and work with us to get those approvals. Can I just also thank, I know I've had in other forums meetings with both our university representatives and our health board representatives. And again, thank you for the work that you and your organisations are doing to support the business cases. And again, I'm hearing some good progress being made around a number of those projects that are about to start their way through the process. And of course, Professor Hughes and I have had a discussion around the waterfront element, the Box Village element of the Swansea Digital, and again, there's good work going on that. So thank you both for that. Again, has anybody got any further updates they wanted to add to anything in terms of the project work or the collaboration that's going on at the present time? Again, welcome any comments or questions you may have on anything that's been relayed today. If not, then those are just for noting. So we will do so. I'll move then on to item 10. Thank you for that, Jonathan. I'll move then to item 10 and welcome Ed Tomp, Chair of the Economic Strategy Board, to give us the ESB's feedback on the HAPS project. So welcome, Ed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me begin by thanking the lead authority, Neath Port Talbot. We've had extensive engagement with them over the past 9 months. They're probably sick of the Economic Strategy Board by now, but they've been brilliant in their support and helping us understand the project, and hopefully we've been able to add a bit of value to that. So again, thank you very much for the cooperation and engagement of the lead authority on this project. We are quite pleased to be able to recommend Holmes's power stations to the Joint Committee. We've looked at this project, as I said, extensively. I would refer you to our recommendation. We talk about areas of focus, and we also do a bit of a SWOT analysis for the strengths, weaknesses, etc. For the project, and I'd ask you to have a look at that. Let me just make 2 points without belaboring it, I suppose. The first is this is a very ambitious project and a very innovative project, I believe. But there are relatively modest resources available to push this forward. And so that just has to be, I suppose, kept in mind. But it's a brilliant project, and we're very supportive of it. The second point is that there really isn't a concept at this stage to make this a regional project. There are 3 regional projects in the portfolio. This is one of them. And we just ask that the Joint Committee and the individual local authorities think about how they can truly make this a regional project. But having said those things, we're very supportive of this project, and again, happy to see it move forward.
Okay, thank you, Ed. And can you take my thanks back to the ESB for the work they've done to review this and for the recommendations they provided, which are most helpful. If we just park the feedback for the moment, and we'll come back to it now as we consider the Holmes as Power Stations business case. So if I can call in Councillor Rob Jones first, and then Nicola Pearce to give us an update in terms of the Holmes as Power Stations business case. So Councillor Jones.
Yeah, typical. My phone goes off just as I unmute my mic. Can I first of all thank Ed for his kind comments in relation to officer input from the authority. I know it's been a long road with HAPS, and of course it should have come sooner than this, but the little thing of COVID interfered. It is an ambitious project. We are looking forward to it, and hopefully with sign off today from the Joint Committee, it will then end up again on the Welsh and UK government's desks. And the one thing that I am really keen is that they expedite these matters as soon as possible. I'm not going to go into the detail of the projects. I'll hand over to my Director for Environment and Regeneration, Mrs. Pierce, please, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, that's great. Nicola, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The Holmes Power Station is the first regional project within the Swansea Bay City region. It's been developed in response to a number of drivers, namely UK and Welsh Government policy to tackle climate change and to meet carbon emission reduction targets. Secondly, the need to deliver low carbon, energy efficient homes to reduce fuel poverty and its impact on health and well-being. And thirdly, it's an acknowledgement that energy and demand side management is needed to reduce energy costs and provide affordable warmth for housing. The project will target both new builds and retrofits and will adapt and evolve over time to secure the most efficient but cost-effective solutions that can be rolled out to existing and proposed housing stocks within and possibly beyond the region. This is a project that has the ability of being scaled up to ensure that we respond to the renewable energy and decarbonisation objectives of the region and the wider country, and therefore secure policy alignment at UK and Welsh Government level, in addition to complementing and supporting current pipeline activity nationally and regionally. It's a 15-year project with an investment required of £15 million, which, as Ed Tomp has just indicated, is not a significant sum of money given the aspirations that we have. It will be delivered by a project team who are not yet in place. The monitoring and evaluation is critical to the success of this project and to ensure the wholesale deployment of renewable technologies which are fit for purpose yet affordable. It will establish a platform for sharing the knowledge to enable a more effective, wider reaching response to climate change within the housing sector. The comprehensive business case has been reviewed by the UK and Welsh Government officials within multiple workshops. It has also been assessed, as Ed Tomp has just indicated, quite extensively by the Economic Strategy Board, and is also being assessed by an independently appointed consultant in the form of a peer review. Earlier this year, the project was considered and approved by the programme board, and given that this project is the first regional project, it has also been considered by each local authority within the Swansea Bay City region, and approval has been secured from each of them to formally submit this project to the Joint Committee today. It's fair to say, therefore, that this project has been extensively assessed since its initial inception. I can also confirm that the project has evolved as it has progressed through the various stages to ensure that it is fit for purpose. That assessment will continue to reflect responses from the Economic Strategy Board and the external stage gate review, which is due to commence shortly. If the recommendation is accepted today, the project will commence that stage gate review, and being optimistically, the initial planning meeting for the stage gate reviews is planned for tomorrow morning. So, as I said, we are rather optimistic in getting that in the diary, but it reflects the fact that these projects have been a long time in the planning. Given that very brief overview and the fact that this project is very familiar to many of you in this meeting, I would like members to consider the recommendations within the report, and there are 2 recommendations as indicated in the paperwork. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Again, as you said, a huge amount of work being done, and you know, if subject to approval today at the Joint Committee, then there's a short process hopefully to go through before this goes to the ministers for final approval. And as Councillor Jones and others have said, you know, it's a really important cross-cutting project. I think Ed said it as well in terms of the fact that not only is it potentially delivering the next generation of fantastic energy efficient homes, which will benefit those people in fuel poverty, and others are helping to eradicate that, but it also creates that new green energy model for us, reducing the power take from the grid and ensuring that we create that green economy that Welsh Government is so keen to see us invest in. So it has so many benefits. And again, my council, I know all 4 councils are already on that path in terms of delivering modular sites and pilot sites for innovative housing. And this takes it to a whole new level. So very, very supportive of this project. If I just pause there, does anybody wish to come in with questions for either Rob or Nicola, and we can take those, or questions or comments? Okay, if there aren't any, then Mr. Evans, we'll come back to you. Ed, again, thank you for the feedback and for the comments that you've made on this business case from yourself and the ESB. So now, Mr. Evans, we'll go back to you for the vote.
You're muted, Hugh.
So if you're for, against or abstaining, please state. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson.
For.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And again, Nicola, please take our thanks back to everybody in the team there who's worked so hard in terms of bringing this project to its position so that we can approve it today. Okay, we'll move then to item 12. And at this point, if I could ask Ms. Walters to leave the meeting whilst we debate this item.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'll go back to Jonathan Barnes. Jonathan?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just note, Hugh, Ed Tomp is trying to get back into the meeting because he's been kicked out for some reason, so he's trying to get back in. I've just had a message from him. So the agenda, yeah. Oh, you're back, are you, Ed? Yeah. No. Okay. So the agenda item is to appoint a senior responsible owner. So basically, Joint Committee is ultimately accountable for the delivery of Swansea Bay City Deal objectives, but the senior responsible owner will work with the Joint Committee to ensure that all the governance and assurance arrangements are put in place and that we meet the accountabilities and responsibilities that are put on us from our sponsors. So appointing the SRO is a requirement both of UK government and Welsh government, which is aligned to the OGC governance framework around projects. And even though I've been appointed as a programme director, I will be responsible for the day-to-day management around the City Deal Programme Management Office. I will work with the SRO in terms of leadership direction to make sure that Joint Committee and the Programme Board receive the documentation and progress updates as you would expect. So the proposal is that Wendy Walters, who is also Chair of Programme Board, is appointed as the SRO. And that she will work with me and my team and with Joint Committee and Programme Board to make sure that everything is on track and being delivered in the way that we want it to be delivered for the City Deal. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan, for that. Yes, I mean, look, a key important role within the City Deal, and the nomination is that Wendy Walters take on that role as Programme SRO. So again, Hugh, I'll come back to you for the vote. Oh, sorry, first, does anybody have any comments or questions in terms of the proposed appointment? No? Okay. Mr. Evans, over to you for the vote.
Okay, again, for, against or abstaining. Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
Obliged. For.
Councillor Rob Jones.
For.
Councillor David Simpson.
For.
That's again unanimous. All 4 are for. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. That's carried. Could I ask somebody to let Ms. Walters know that we've concluded that item and that she can rejoin the meeting? Thank you. And I'll just pause for a second to allow Ms. Walters to do that. Okay, there we are. Great stuff. Wendy's back in the meeting. Okay, we'll go back to Jonathan Burns now for item 13, the Programme Management Office structure. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Programme Management Office structure, what has been presented to Programme Board, which is now passed on to Joint Committee, is an options appraisal. There is currently several staff appointed to the Programme Management Office, including myself, Finance Manager, Communications Officer and a Business Engagement Manager. But what this proposal is asking is to recruit a few more by approving option B2. This will focus then on the more assurance and governance of the City Deal programme and projects, and also the strategic development and business case development part of it. So this is all based on top slicing from the 15-year programme within the first 5 years of 1.5%, and then contributions from the 8 partners over a 5-year period. So what would account for the costs associated with this whole PMO structure would be about 50% of the operating budget for the City Deal. And by having that, this is basically taking what you would find in a traditional PMO and trying to streamline that to make sure that we have appropriate governance and assurance in place, and that making sure that all partners and stakeholders get the right information at the right time at the right standard. I believe that this will provide enough capacity and capability to govern, assure and advance the Swansea Bay City Deal. And then there's an option within B2 to have a look down the line within the next 12 months to look at if there's any further posts that we require. And again, that would come back through Programme Board and Joint Committee to have that approval. So there are several considerations, risks and assumptions put in place. The top slicing is one, contributions is the second. There are things around redundancies to make sure that we account for those. So those will be factored into the budget. And in the next Joint Committee, we will bring the broader budget for the operation of Swansea Bay City Deal for your consideration. But within the envelope, this option B2 fits within the staffing budget that has currently been allocated. So that's pretty much B2 is the recommendation for Joint Committee. Okay. No, Rob, you're on mute.
Thank you for that. And again, happy to support 2B as the option. And I think it's a sensible, measured approach in terms of giving you the resources and the office the resources that we need to ensure that all of the remaining projects get approved. And of course, all the projects that are approved get delivered, because that is what the major oversight of the programme office is. So very happy to support this. And again, now I'll pause to open it up for questions or comments on the proposed structure and the proposed option as moved by Jonathan. So welcome any comments or thoughts from colleagues.
Councillor Stewart, I'd just like to come in just to follow up really a couple of points. I think the report quite well articulates some of the risks, and John has alluded to them, but in my duty, Section 151, I shouldn't not comment under the circumstances, because we are reliant upon the support of the funding over the 15 years. That John mentioned that the funding package for this PMO, and indeed for all the costs of the City Deal, are coming out of the partner contributions. We're in year 3 of the partner contributions, so we have another 2 years of that post 2021, which is the commitment that originally went in place. And we're reliant upon the top slicing of the 1.5% of the City Deal over 15 years. And again, I'm reliant upon constituent authorities to support in terms of the translation of that from what is capital money into revenue money to support the project. B2 is a recommendation, which is fine, but it does need the engagement of the constituent authorities in supporting that going forward to actually allow us to manage the budget over the next 5 years. John also mentioned redundancy costs, as the contracts will be for a certain period of time in terms of the delivery of the city deal, again, their potential redundancy costs. And this I've recommended within the report should be actually supported by an accumulation of some fund over the next 5 years, which is probably the most appropriate way to do it. It is a difficult juggling act because we've got to get the project management office in place, but we haven't got all the money and we haven't got all the projects supported. Once we got the guarantee on the 241 million, life will be a lot easier, and confidence level in terms of the funding for the full term will be a little bit easier. But it is a balance between what we need to do up front, and we got to take some risks within the overall planning. But it's right and proper to actually highlight those within this meeting so that all constituent authorities are aware of it. And I know colleagues, Section 151s, are also conscious of that position.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore, for that. Yes, very helpful addition to the report there. Again, open it up for comments or questions on the structure. Again, just one point I'd like to make, which is obviously it's critical that we get this structure in place, not only for to give Jonathan and the office the resources they need to help us to deliver, but of course it's a key requirement that we have that office fully functional and set up as part of the independent audit report that was done, and this will help us to satisfy that, allowing the release of further funds to the city region for future projects as well. So really important on more than one count that we seek to support this. Okay, I've not seen anybody put their hands up or asked to come in. So again, Mr. Evans, we'll move back to you for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So if you're for, against or abstaining, Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Emlyn Dole.
For option B2.
Councillor Rob Jones.
Yes, agree B2.
Councillor David Simpson. Councillor David Simpson.
Sorry, for option B2.
Thank you. That's unanimous for option B2.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Sounds like you got Attack of the Birds going on down there in County Hall. So thank you. Thank you for that, colleagues. And then on to our final item. Sorry, item 14 today. Is not our final item.
Item 13, Councillor.
Item 14, Programme Risk Register. Yeah?
Item 13, that is.
Yeah, understand. So we've got the Programme Risk Register and the Programme Issues Log next.
Thank you, Chair.
Jonathan, back to you.
Okay, the last two items are actually interrelated, but I'll deal with the risk register first and the issues. So you have a risk register that's been shared with you. In that risk register, the only ones that come to joint committee are the red risks at a programme level. So in that sheet that you have is 12 red risks. These are to be reviewed, and they will be reviewed and presented to programme board by July. And then re-presented to you with further updates. So you might find that the format slightly changes, but taking the risks as categories. So the impact of COVID-19, as I mentioned earlier, there's a COVID impact assessment being produced for every project, bar one. We're still awaiting one. That will be presented to programme board and to joint committee in the next meetings. The whole point of it is looking at a point in time risk and impact assessment based around 8 criteria, and where projects feel that they are, with a programme management office then having their view on it. And there's escalation routes within the impact assessment based on how likely or how impactful those risks are. So if I take some examples, we referred to supply chain management. So if we are having problems with supply chain management because of COVID, those would go into a project level risk. And then if that happens across all projects from the infrastructure perspective, that will be escalated up. So that's being dealt with. That will be presented to you in the future. Around the implementation, there's a whole host of red risks around slippage of delivery program, business cases not being approved or fail, scope in change in scope, delay in development of business plans. All of those are currently being mitigated and managed. as a program director, I feel relatively comfortable, even though these are red risks. We are doing everything that we can to make sure that delays are minimized, that business cases are approved, and that we have things in place to make sure that you as a joint committee are having the information available to you. So Nick referred to external stage gate reviews for the projects with HAPS and low carbon. So those things are happening. Our internal regional due diligence is happening on business cases. And again, we will present to a joint committee a schedule through the implementation plan in the next meeting. In terms of financial risks, we had from Andy the update on the audit. There are a host of financial risks in there. Chris, I know that yourself and Richard are reviewing those to make sure that they're scored at the right level, because some of them probably aren't a red risk at program level, so they're going to be part of that review as well. Chris, do you want to add anything on the financial part of those risks?
Not particularly at the moment. I think there is a continuous review,
yes.
And as we get more and more schemes over the final hurdle with Welsh Government, we can have bigger confidence in the funding and the distribution of the funding. But certainly, I haven't got much more to add at the moment. No.
Thank you. And then from an issues perspective, again, most of the issues are highlighted, known, and are being dealt with. But what the Waterfront Oregon, again, it relates to the risk register. There are issues around funding released from Welsh Government, which are all subject to the terms and conditions that are imposed on the Swansea Bay City deal that we're working towards. So in terms of the terms and conditions, what we are doing to make sure that both at a project and a program level that we get approval and funding drawdown, the Integrated Assurance and Approval Plan, which is the next agenda item, that has now been developed. We have an implementation plan that gets regularly updated. Monitoring Evaluation Plan, I've drafted that. That will go to the next program board. We are in the process of establishing a PMO. We have one, but we're further recruiting now with that approval for B2 option. And then there's certain project-specific requirements around Oregon and Waterfront that need to be satisfied. And our target date for all of those things, which are embedded within the risk register, is the end of June. So we hope to get all of those things in place and satisfy the terms and conditions by the end of June. Again, I'm being optimistic because I want to try and push this forward and get it as many of these things over the line as we can. But the end of June is that deadline. So that's pretty much the risk register and issues log, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. And again, as you mentioned, a number of those will need to be further updated as we get into the detail of the work. So again, we expect in a month or two to have a much more comprehensive look and more up-to-date look at those risks and issues, but nothing for us to specifically concern ourselves with today. But I will open it out to colleagues. Is there any comments, questions for Jonathan or anybody in the room on the risks or issues listed in your pack? No? Okay, then that one's for noting, and we'll go on then to item 15, which is the Integrated Assurance and Approval Plan. Jonathan?
Thanks, Chair. So I kind of alluded to that in the risk register. This is part of the governance assurance that we're having at programme, and we will be cascading that down to project level as well. So most of the people on this call probably haven't even heard of an integrated assurance plan. So I'll just give a kind of brief overview as to what it is and what we've achieved to date. So Welsh and UK government require us to do an integrated assurance and approval plan. It is good governance process, but effectively put it into a simplistic form, it's a milestone of dates. And it could be around governance, which could be meetings. It could be assurance in terms of documents and meetings or stage gate reviews, internal peer reviews, audits. So all of those combination of a kind of schedule, if you like, by project, and then cascaded up to a program level is what the IAAP is. It's a live document. It will be continually evolved and updated. We've had a training session with Welsh Government, so they cascaded down a training session around the IAAP. That has now gone to all project managers, and we are now working with project managers to get it populated both at project and then program level. What we have already provided Welsh Government, as even though it's one of the terms and conditions, The feedback is that they've said this is best practice in Wales. They are very happy with it. They've suggested some amendments, but they're minor tweaks. But they've congratulated on us for getting this done so quickly and robustly. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Again, any questions for Jonathan on this item? Any comments anybody wish to make? No. Okay, then again, this item is for noting, and that takes us to AOB. So I haven't been notified of any other business, but does anybody have anything that they wish to introduce? I'm more than happy to take it if they do.
Yeah, Chair, this is Ed Tomp. I did lose my connection, so I was expecting to do item 15, but I did lose my connection, but I'm back now.
Okay, thank you, Ed. I think we did your item earlier, Ed, so we moved you up the agenda, so yeah. You're okay.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm glad to see you back. Okay, with that then, folks, Mr. Evans, what's the date of the next meeting so everybody has it?
I don't have it. Oh, sorry. It's Thursday, the 9th of July at 10:30 a.m.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you, colleagues, for joining today. And again, well done, everybody, on managing the technology for our first meeting. It's becoming the norm now, as we know. And if I don't see you before, I shall see you all in July. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.